The gavel's first strike was a crack of thunder. The second, a fading echo. The third was the sound of final nail being hammered into a coffin. I sentence you, Nyla Roberts, to death by hanging. May your disgrace serve as a warning. Gasps tore through the courtroom, a collective gasp of disbelief and horror. Judge Lawrence Whitaker leaned forward, his icy blue eyes dissecting her as if she were a stain on pristine marble. His white beard couldn't hide the triumphant smirk that twisted his lips. Nyla stood straight, her wrists cuffed, the stark orange of her jumpsuit a defiant splash of color against the drab gray of the room. Her natural curls formed a rebellious halo around her head. "I'm not afraid of death," she said, her voice even and clear. "I'm afraid of the silence that lets men like you build thrones on the backs of the innocent. You will not speak." Whitaker snapped, a wave of color flooding his face. "You incited riots, endangered officers." "I exposed a murder," she cut in, her whisper somehow carrying across the stunned silence of the room. The trial had been a farce. An all-white jury selected in hours. Key witnesses had vanished. Crucial evidence had been thrown out. 3 days from arrest to conviction. It wasn't justice. It was a staged execution. In the back row, Nyla's aunt clutched a worn photograph of Nyla and her 6-year-old son, the one who Nyla called her little lion. She had begged Nyla to take a plea deal, but Nyla had refused. "They can't hang a lie around my neck if I never speak it," she'd said. Outside, a crowd chanted "Free NYLA" and pounded on the courthouse walls. Inside, Whitaker pronounced her transfer to New Warden Prison for a public execution in 3 days. Cameras flashed, headlines were being written, and the truth remained buried under a mountain of lies. But in Washington, D.C., a single manila file slid across the desk of Special Agent Nathan Monroe. The red stamp on it screamed classified. Target, Judge Lawrence Whitaker. Inside were sealed affidavits, missing evidence logs, and the files of 3 other black defendants sentenced to death by Whitaker with almost no proof. Now, Monroe knew Nyla Roberts' name. She was a whistleblower who had leaked body camera footage of an illegal raid targeting black families, exposing police planting weapons. Whitaker was part of the very machine that had crushed her. Agent Lena Ortiz burst in, tossing a flash drive onto his desk. 3 days, she said grimly. The gallows are already being built. Monroe loaded the footage. Grainy, shaky images showed Whitaker, cloaked in shadow, slipping into the courthouse evidence room the night before Nyla's conviction. Why would a judge be sneaking in there? Lena asked. "Because he's burying something," Monroe said, his jaw tightening. The case had just turned personal. Years ago, Whitaker had presided over a trial that had destroyed Monroe's cousin, a case officially ruled a suicide, though Monroe never believed it. He knew the man's cruelty ran deep. "We need a warrant," Monroe told Lena, his voice like steel, "for everything Whitaker's touched in the last 15 years. By nightfall, the director of the FBI had signed it. Monroe drove alone through the dark to New Warden Prison. He had to see Nyla in solitary. She sat barefoot on the cold concrete floor, humming a lullaby her grandmother once sang during thunderstorms. When Monroe stepped in, she looked up, her gaze steady. "You're late," she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "I was expecting someone with a conscience," he replied, sliding a small note into her hand. "You are not alone. I'm not asking you to trust me," he added. "Just hold on." "I've been holding on my whole life," she whispered. "I can give you 3 more days." The next afternoon, a man in a priest's collar visited. "New chaplain," he told the guards. But when he sat, he opened a worn Bible to reveal a flash drive hidden inside. "You don't know me," he murmured, "but I'm part of something bigger. Monroe isn't just trying to save you. He's trying to burn the whole system down." Nyla narrowed her eyes. "Why risk this for me?" "Because you're not just a symbol," he said. "You're the spark. Whitaker is tied to a private prison network getting kickbacks for every inmate, especially death row. You're not being punished. You're being monetized." Nyla clenched her jaw. "What's on this drive?" "Wire transfers. Meeting logs. Even a recording of Whitaker saying he'll clean up the mess before the election. If Monroe fails, You get this to the press. The truth doesn't die here. That night, she hit a drive in her pillow. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Asterisk the rope, don't scare me, baby girl. Living quiet when you should be screaming. That's what scares me. Asterisk, I'm still screaming, Grandpa, she whispered. Hours later, heavy footsteps thundered down the corridor. She held her breath. The guards passed her cell. Shouts erupted, then silence. In the warden's office, Monroe stood, a federal warrant in his hand. The next morning, the courthouse was a swarm of reporters. Protesters' chants shook the air. Nyla entered, shackled, her head held high. Whitaker lounged on the bench, his fingers drumming a steady rhythm. Let the record show, he announced. The sentence stands. Public hanging today. A collective murmur rippled through the gallery. Whitaker's gavel slammed, and as Nyla's eyes locked on his, she smiled. Not in defeat, but in warning. The storm was coming. Just as Judge Lawrence Whitaker raised his gavel for the final, damning strike, the heavy courtroom doors burst open. 6 armed FBI agents swept in, forming a perimeter. At the center stood a tall man in a gray suit, his badge held high. Agent Nathan Monroe. Someone gasped. Cameras whirred. The bailiff froze, and Whitaker's face drained of color. Monroe stepped forward, a thick evidence file in his hand. By federal order, this courtroom is under investigation. Judge Lawrence Whitaker, you are under arrest for obstruction, conspiracy, falsifying records, and judicial corruption. Whitaker barked a laugh. You have no jurisdiction. Not anymore, Monroe said, handing over a warrant signed by the U.S. Attorney General. 2 agents moved to Nyla Roberts, still in her orange jumpsuit. They removed her cuffs carefully. She looked at Monroe. You did this. We did, he replied. You gave them a voice. We brought the proof. Whitaker slammed his gavel, so hard it cracked in 2. This is a witch hunt. She threatens this country. Monroe's voice cut through the noise. No, Judge. You did. Rigging cases, burying lives, and profiting from it. Whitaker sneered. I'll burn this system before I'm dragged from my court. But agents seized him, and his broken gavel rolled to Nyla's feet. She kicked aside. A woman's voice rose from the back of the courtroom, trembling with emotion. Tell the world, Nyla. Nyla faced the cameras. They tried to bury me alive, but they forgot one thing. Seeds grow in the dark. Whitaker was let out in chains. The defendant was free. The judge was the criminal. 2 days later, headlines blazed across the nation. FBI cracks down on corrupt judge. Nyla Roberts exonerated. Judicial racism exposed. The image of Whitaker in cuffs went viral, but the fight wasn't over. In a federal courtroom, Whitaker now sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. Monroe testified first. Between 2008 and 2024, Lawrence Whitaker accepted $4.3 million in bribes from private prison investors, ensuring a steady flow of primarily black and brown defendants through rigged trials. Evidence included encrypted emails, offshore transfers, and pre-written convictions. Then came Nyla, wearing a simple white dress. She refused a prepared statement, locking eyes with Whitaker. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. I was ready to die in that cell, not because I was guilty, but because I thought no one would believe a black woman alone. But I wasn't alone. People believed. Now you answer for the lives you stole. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. A black woman judge delivered the sentence. Life in prison without parole. No gavel was needed. Outside, reporters swarmed. Do you want an apology? Will you retire from activism? I don't want an apology, Nyla said. I want this country to look in the mirror. Every courtroom is being watched, and every little girl who looks like me must know she doesn't have to bend or break. Applause roared. I was condemned not for a crime, but for being inconvenient. They tried to hang me in silence. But the soil they buried me in, that was my ground. You can bury a body, but you cannot kill the truth. The truth will rise and it will roar. 6 months later, the Whitaker reforms swept the nation. Review boards were established in every state. Dozens of Whitaker's victims were freed. More corrupt judges were exposed. Then came another headline. NYLA Roberts runs for Congress. On the Capitol steps, she declared, "They try to hang me in silence. Now I will speak louder than ever, and this time they will listen." One evening in Charleston, Nyla walked through her old neighborhood. Children played in the street. A little girl ran up. "Are you the lady from TV?" "I am." Nyla smiled. "Were you in jail?" "Yes." "Did it hurt?" Nyla knelt. "Yes, but I came out stronger." The girl hugged her. "You're a hero." "No, sweetie," Nyla whispered. "I'm just a woman you'll see in yourself one day." She walked away into the night, not as a victim, but as a storm that refused to pass.